Hello, welcome back. Day 19. The prompt is in my cup. And we're talking about tea bags, tea bag art, coffee and tea dyeing, perhaps folding some things, that sort of imagery. Coffee dye paper and tea dye, or coffee stained and tea stained paper, are absolute staples for especially vintage junk journals. I may have a less than popular view, but it's not my favorite. I don't mind 1 or 2 pages in a journal, but I dislike whole signatures of it. I would then almost prefer a lined paper or a better quality new paper or a heavier bond or something rather than the tea or coffee dyed. But fact of the matter, to age or technique or transform very, very plain white paper, which is this, into something less stark, coffee and tea dye is absolutely the quickest and most cost effective. So you will find a lot of it in junk journals. I've put some papers here purely to show the shades that you get. So this is white printer paper, and this is coffee. So this is a weak instant coffee mixture, a teaspoon with some boiling water, poured in a pan, and the whole page is just submerged and soaked. This was a decaf. Decaf gives a slightly grayer or browner for some reason than regular coffee. I only drink filter coffee, so the decaf is for guests. So I don't have regular instant coffee. This is tea, like 5 Roses tea, slightly pinker. I'm not sure the camera will pick up all the nuances. And then you can see this is brushed on and rubbed and made sure that the tea gets everywhere. And this is sort of dipped. So you can also play around with how tea dyed you want your paper. This is tea dyed, and what I then did is I put a plastic doily, you get these at Pep or wherever, over it when it was drying. So you get little patterns in it, and that'll work for anything that you put over. Even if you were doing this page over it, you'll get a line. What I also like is I like drying it on like cake drying racks, because then you get a grid, and that's quite a nice look. So when I do use the paper, I prefer the ones with patterns and things. This is Rooibos, which, as the name suggests, gives you a completely different color. So be aware, if you are tea dyeing and coffee dyeing, the coffee and Ceylon tea gives a browner, neutrally vintage look. The Rooibos gives a very specific look. What I like with this, you can see, is I use the actual tea bag with the tea leaves and everything in, and I stamped with it. And then what I like doing is I like doing grids over it. This is maybe the wrong color, but I'm going to do it just so you can see, so that you get a much more modern look on the paper than just tea dye, because what picks up on the tea bags is a little detail of the fluted edges and things. So in that respect, it's quite interesting. So something like that, rather than just very traditional, because it's a very difficult medium, I think, to modernize. Like, I can't absolutely lends itself to a vintage journal, a romantic journal, and for us, the Farmhouse Christmas. tea imagery is very popular. You'll often find journaling items with tea and coffee. This is from a book. You'll find it in recipe books and things. I think it's because of what tea and coffee, hot drinks, the comfort and the community that it also symbolizes, why you'll see it used so often. I have done a full show and tell unboxing video of a swap, a tea and coffee themed swap that I did, and I also discuss how to introduce those sort of elements, tea and coffee elements in that swap. I'll place the link in the video. And then the last item, I'm going to show it on the page from the pack because it goes so nicely. The actual tea bags. So this is a 5 Roses tea bag. Can you see the colouring is far pinker than the very, it's probably yellow like ochre of the rooibos. But the bags are so pretty because they've got little roses embossed in them. The easiest way to get them to this stage so that they are dyed and usable is to let them dry, because to try and get the tea leaves out while it's wet is very difficult, and you can just do a little slit. So these make they make quite cute or novelty pockets because they're textured and they instantly dyed, and the same with that's quite grungy actually. It's almost industrial, this look, rather than that. And that you get with rooibos. Herbal teas, you can get pink colorways if you do some of the berry teas and things. Same with the mint, you go towards green. So you can definitely play around with it. And especially if you are a tea drinker, you have the tea bag in any case. Then, I tried, but I don't think I was very successful. Some people scrunch the tea bags up and they manage to get little roses towards the beginning of the page. I didn't quite manage it, but towards the end, you get the little rose effect. That's also quite a nice image to play along with. I think if you water paint or something over that would look quite interesting. So for today, I'm going to use this page. I'm going to use some of my tea bags. Tea bags, this material is very similar to the ones we now get everywhere to wash your trolley and things at supermarkets, the stuff they do the anti-COVID spray and things on. So if you're not a tea drinker, that woven cloth is actually quite good as a substitute if you wanted to recreate this sort of look. So for the page, I definitely think the prompt can be more, it doesn't need to be physically what's in your cup, tea, coffee, that sort of thing. But it could be the feeling of a coffee date or the comfort of a hot drink. But if you wanted to modernize it, it could absolutely be what's in your glass or a cocktail recipe. Something like that can be fun if you're doing it for a younger audience or someone who's not so into vintage. But I'm using this background page today because I like the color variations on it. When you tea and coffee dye papers, they get quite bulky, so you can either iron them or you can just leave them under like an encyclopedia for a couple of days. And then if you bother dyeing, I suggest just dye in bulk. You can hang them on the line. The paper is fragile, but it's not that crazy. And then you've got a whole stack rather than doing it piecemeal. You can paint with coffee. You can stencil with coffee. It's a dye basically. So you can stencil. It's just slightly. It needs to be less. You need to make it as a paste rather than as a drink if you want to apply it in different ways. But you can coffee and tea dye anything, fabric, all of that. It's a much lighter dye than it would be putting food colouring or something like that in. I've had feedback that people struggle writing on coffee and tea dye paper. Personally, it's not something that I have struggled with. I mean, this pen goes on fine. As does let's find a ball pen, if it works. Yeah, I mean, I don't see any issue as does a Koki like we've shown, as does a, what is this, a Staedtler. Yeah, I don't see that there's any issue. You can also buy, these are little blank tea bags, and they're quite cute as little additions on the junk journal, but you see they're made of that fabric that you sanitize your trolley with I'm guessing a fuse tool, but I mean you can stitch it. So again, it's a little novelty edition, but something about a teapot or a nice set of cups and saucers or steam coming out a coffee cup, or the imagery is comforting. I like both of these images. It's an Italian book, so the text doesn't really matter, but I'm going to do a tip in, tip out, I don't know how I'm using it in my journal yet, of the page. I think it'll have to be a tip out on the edge, and for that, instead of washi tape, I'm going to show you something. It's not new, but we haven't used in the journaling series. This is lick and stick paper. You get it the standard width, but I mean it doesn't come in a very big roll. You get it at hardware stores, and it's like a buff brown paper, and then it's got gum on the one side, and this works very well for tip-ins too. I only thought about it later. And you can write on it, you can stamp on it, so it's actually quite, and it strengthens spines. It's actually quite a versatile product to have if you are looking to expand your repertoire of items. So I've put some thin washi as the outside, and then you can see the lick and stick paper gives a very nice drawing. So I quite like that. And then I'm definitely going to use my little tea bags. I do like using them because they're tactile. I'm going to just use both. The colors are good. And I will probably use them not as the actual thing as a bag, because they're sometimes a bit jagged, but just glue it as if it's a pocket. For me, tea or coffee, I do drink both, and I drink copious amounts of both. Fixes everything. So can't think, cup of tea. Need to calm down, cup of tea. Need to wake up, cup of coffee. Need to calm down, cup of coffee. Basically, oh, long day, cup of tea. So for me, it is a very comforting thing. And it's also something that as a family, the kids, my husband, everyone, we often sit down for tea time, and we'll have tea time and a snack. And so it is also, there's also a ritual element to it. So as a page and as a prompt, it's something that I can relate to. If you do stick down tea bags, just try and keep the glue on the fluted edges, because otherwise you're not going to be able to use the bag, because the paper's quite thin. And then you'll see the paper acts quite normally. You can staggering this. You can stamp on it. So it's just something to add some interest to the page. Not a very complicated page for me today. And then I've got this Saki. It says set aside coffee. This is a job for alcohol. Except I don't really drink. So I've got another word. Whoops. This is lots of words on my fingers. I've got creative and art, so I'm going to cover the alcohol like very clearly with that, so it's just a bit of a joke. It's all from the Tim Holtz range of words. If you find them on sale, buy them. They're quite expensive otherwise, and you probably can make your words yourself. But they are very helpful journaling tools, especially if you're a bit stuck for finishing off a page or something like that. I'm just pondering whether to do a script. Yeah, I think so. By the way, we're getting into tearing paper and franken paper and letting go of perfection tomorrow. Oh, it's just a little bit of fun on my side. Coffee ring, it's a stamp, but you could easily stamp with an actual cup with coffee rings, just to have some movement over the page. And I've got a little wood chip element heart, but it's not a heart, it's like a disformed heart or a abstracted heart, so I'm going to add that. And then I'm happier with how it looks. I like it a bit grungier, but definitely still a bit farmhousey.